I think what you said too is also important about how some guys are financially great, but mentally or emotionally, they're all over the place. And finding that balance, I think, is key. And part of what you said was if the only person you have to go to help you try and find that grounding moment is your wife, that might not be the best place for you. And I know you came from a sports background, and I love talking to people that came from sports backgrounds because aside from, I love boxing, I love jujitsu, I love all that stuff. But on top of what it taught me about staying calm in chaos and just learning a lot about yourself, the community, the bonding, the friendship of being around guys that are supposed to be alpha males and have them actually give you a safe place to open up and talk and be vulnerable, I think was a huge piece that doesn't get talked about enough. And as a football guy, I'm sure you had people like that in the locker room, some of the biggest, most athletic, burly men in the world that
Yeah.
still had self-doubt and struggle. So was that part of where you learned to have that communication and that connection past your immediate family? Has sports helped you with that?
Sports did help me with that a little bit. And it was more of a brute, toughen up or here, there. But there is a lot of mentorship as well. So I think about high school where you play all 4 years with the same group of guys. I'll never forget when we got knocked out of playoffs. I was starting at wide receiver and safety, but I was sitting in the offensive huddle and we're down by 10 points. I think there's 2 minutes to go. And like we're all crying except for the quarterback, right? Quarterback's trying to call the play in, and we see the writings on the wall. We're not coming back in this, and realize that our time together is done. You go to college, it's a little bit different. Seniors graduating each year, you're all intermixed with each other, and the new crop of freshmen coming in. The bonds aren't as tight, but those upperclassmen really help you with, hey, this is how you need to prioritize your schedule to get shit done. This is the mistake you're making when you're lining up across the ball from that corner. Here's how you get off the line. Like they're showing you beyond the coaches, and you're able to watch them kind of get through. So because it's such a brute, like emotions and stuff like that were definitely not talked about in locker room. It was definitely more locker room talk. To answer your question, where I really got it from is actually watching my father not do it.
Huh.
And so I'm a student of leadership. So I think back my high school senior year football coach, worst leader I ever played for, worst coach I ever played for. But I took lessons away from him on how I didn't want to lead. My father was a very directive leader. He was a very good leader, very good. But that being said, I watched not only myself, but the other leaders that were very capable within the firm wanting to be in a more collaborative approach. And what I found in that is that people that are a part of the plan don't fight the plan. So when I bought him out, I brought them into the fold and I promised, hey, I will never spend your money without your permission, because we had a lot of shared expenses and shared investments and stuff of that nature. And we made it a collaborative approach. As I grew within that, as I realized that I was part of a study group, a really tiny mastermind of 6 individuals. I referenced them in my book. I've been with them for 15 years. We really leaned into not just helping each other as business leaders, but better husbands, better fathers, better friends. And then I've just grown. I saw my leaps and bounds as a human grew so much with that group that I started bringing that as a part of my masterminds. My mastermind, like we're talking about the whole human. We're not just talking about business. Yeah, there's going to be business issues that we're addressing and helping each other, but we're going to talk about our faith walk. We're going to talk about how we're leading in the home. We're going to talk about our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health. We're going to talk about all things to make sure that we're the most rounded humans possible. And just what I find is that most men grew up with a dad or in an environment that they, talking about feelings was a sign of weakness. Crying was a sign of weakness. Vulnerability was a sign of weakness. And as you grow as a mature human, you realize that that was all bullshit, that emotions and crying and vulnerability is a part of strength and life. Like if you bottle those emotions and don't talk about your shit, essentially what you're doing is sweeping it under the rug. And all of a sudden the rug gets too much of a mound underneath it and you trip over it. And then all of a sudden that trip turns into you lashing out on the person that didn't deserve it, namely your spouse, namely your kids. They didn't deserve it. And then you feel guilty and shameful. And it turns into this cycle. Then you beat yourself up over it. It's like, what if we could just skip that? Like asking that question, like, what if I just talked about my shit with other men or with a therapist and actually became a better husband, father, leader? And that's what we need to get to. That's a position of strength. And that's why I was so vulnerable in my book and shared my story, because I wanted to be an example to other men that, hey, this is actually strength, not weakness.